Closing that window over there. Oh, you might not even see it at all. That's fine. Um, oh, there we go. Hey, how's it going? My name is Arden, and today we're talking about Endless Winter. So thanks for joining me, everybody. So we're doing an interesting thing. I've been sitting on these Endless Winter books for a while, but I never ordered all of them. I got about 6 issues, and then didn't even realize or think about the fact that I hadn't really got them all because I just figured, oh, those are tie-ins, and then reading through it, it's a little more sequential than that, but there kind of are also tie-ins, and I decided, well, every time these events come around, people always ask how much of it do I need to read and stuff. So today we're going to review 2/3 of Endless Winter, specifically Endless Winter number 1, the Flash 767, so the Flash tie-in one, the Justice League tie-in, Justice League number 38. Dark Side, thanks for joining us. Saw you in the trailer, I guess. Zachariah Thompson also said, can't wait for the Snyder Cut. I have my own opinions on that, but that's fine. Teen Titans special, the Black Adam special, yes, phone, I know I'm online. And Justice League Endless Winter number 2. So, oops, I also showed that one weird. But yeah, so these are the issues we'll be talking about today. What isn't here is the Justice League Dark, I believe. Here, the reading order is right over here. So I skipped over the Superman issue, the Aquaman issue, and Justice League Dark. So 3 chapters. In the end, it's my opinion that is perfectly justified. While there is a certain sequence to this all and references to the issues I'm kind of skipping over, it's not really mandatory to read all of these issues. They do kind of come together, and they do have little references here and there. Darkseid saying, "Oh, we liked our Injustice reviews. Thank you. Those were fun to do." And yeah, they're pretty optional, but some are more important or relevant than others. It still feels like you could read Endless Winter number 1 and 2, and then just sort of fill in the tie-ins with whatever ones interest you, and you'll have a pretty complete sense of what's going on. Because broadly speaking, each of the tie-ins is kind of doing the same thing. But maybe we'll get into a little bit of what the story's about, who's involved and stuff first. Because it is an interesting cast behind the scenes, we'll say. We have Andy Lanning and Ron Marz writing this together. So kind of 2 older writers, more prominent from the 90s and stuff like that. And then we have people like Howard Porter, Sir Manico, Hi-Fi is doing coloring, all these pretty cool artists sort of doing the different issues. Howard Porter, I guess, is the big name across most titles and the most common art theme, and he's really good at creating this big world and doing some more larger-than-life sequences, but I find his facial expressions a little underwhelming, though Endless Winter is kind of a cool blend where it takes advantage of the wide array of artists it features, and thus it allows for lots of different creative types behind the scenes. What am I trying to say here? Like, because the tie-ins have different artists and art styles, there's a nice blend of some that focus more on facial expressions and other stuff. So it creates a good balance and a healthy dose of like DC characters kind of across the board, all dealing with this endless winter. And it's a very simple plot. That kind of gets into the writing, actually, so where the art is kind of very contemporary and an interesting mix of more cartoony looks, like in the Black Adam special, which isn't a great mix, to be honest. Or more serious stuff, like from Howard Porter, who, again, like does the big actiony things. I don't know if he does this particular image here, but he's good at stuff like what we're seeing right on this side over here. And less so at maybe some of the more nuanced panels of facial expressions and that kind of thing. But because it's all blended together, it works. The writing reminds me a lot of older like superhero stories in general, especially like it kind of feels like what it is, which is a sort of almost throwback story written by more classic writers. And so aspects of it feel a little bit dated. it also feels very much like almost a Marvel story, like specifically a Jason Aaron's Avengers story plastered onto DC's world, because we have like these flashbacks to the 10th century where Black Adam, Hippolyta, the Viking Prince, so Thor, I guess, and Swamp Thing are all teaming up to defeat the Frost King and the end of this winter back then, and that corresponds to the contemporary comics where, or like the contemporary, like the current day events where the Frost King has returned and he kind of reemerges where the Fortress of Solitude used to be, and it seems, as we eventually learn, it empowers him, and he creates winter across the world, and so the Justice League and the other heroes of Earth must grapple with it and find a way to take on this new threat. So the first Endless Winter sets that up kind of nicely. It's kind of weird almost, because the facial expressions throw this part off a little bit, but they're fighting a bunch of villains, and the Flash is asking all these questions about like balancing life and family and this kind of work. Meanwhile, which is weird because it doesn't feel like it super corresponds with the rest of Endless Winter. So it's kind of a weird little intro, but it's a fun enough start, and they arrest the villains. And then Stag Industries is meanwhile digging around where the Fortress of Solitude used to be, harvesting all these Kryptonian crystals that Superman apparently just left behind, which is profoundly reckless and out of character. And it's little moves like this that just feel a little dated for me. Zachariah Solomon, for example, in chat, I just noticed, said DC's like Endless Winter was a weird event for me. I did not hate it or love it. I think I'm going to echo a lot of that sentiment throughout, because there's really cool aspects of it, because sure enough, they unleash the Endless Winter over at Stag Industries, and the Justice League shows up to fight it, and it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff. But it just kind of is all set up in the first issue, and he unleashes the winter upon the world. And Superman kind of realizes he's partially responsible, but like I said, it just doesn't make sense for him to have ever done that. And then we have the first flashback to the past. Now, then we get the next part, I would say, is actually one of the few important, like kind of important tie-in issues, because it jumps right into where we left off. We see the group from the past, the Justice League 10th AD, we'll say. Just me kind of riffing on Jason Aaron's like Avengers 1 million BC or whatever. But sure enough, the same kind of thing happens, and the Frost King attacks back then as he did in the future. Meanwhile, the Flash is racing around trying to figure things out, and in a great little moment, he like is talking to Superman in Metropolis, Wonder Woman's busy in Africa, Green Lantern's in DC, Batman's operating in Gotham, and no one's even heard from Aquaman. And then the Flash like races off to China to help out Keenan Kong, which is a fun little cameo, and I really liked that part. Meanwhile, Black Adam is raving against the world, saying that they shouldn't do this. But the Flash also can feel the winter is slowing him down, and it's almost like the Speed Force is pushing against him. So he's kind of doing his best. But he gets called basically into the Justice League and they ask him to check out what's going on in Kahndaq and talk to Black Adam, because he was like telling the UN off in the middle of this disaster, saying that the Justice League isn't doing enough. So he goes in just kind of on a peacekeeping mission, and gets overwhelmed by the ice creatures, but gets saved by Black Adam and the villains that the Justice League was actually fighting at the beginning of the story, including like Catman, Multiplex, a bunch of kind of like B-grade names. And they actually rescue the Flash, and Black Adam brings him to his palace, and they heal him up. The Flash gets something to eat, and he's like, "Oh, thank you for saving my life." And they actually have a pretty productive conversation. And Barry says that he can't find the Frost King anywhere. But he's having trouble because he doesn't have enough lightning, so Black Adam summons lightning for him and kind of empowers Barry. And they have a pretty friendly conversation, and as he leaves, Black Adam's like, "Oh, that was very useful." So he kind of clearly has his own plan in all of this. At which point, Barry rescues Iris West and continues to race on, and it goes into the Superman issue, which I don't have, but I don't think it's terribly important. I'll be reading into chat in a sec, guys. But I'm kind of on a roll here, so well, here that's a good spot for it. Um, Darkseid was saying that he also likes our Darkseid War coverage for the comic, and then asked about Comic Story. And yeah, we have a pretty friendly relationship with Benny. He's been on our channel, and we've been on his. We haven't done that in a while, but it is generally a friendly relationship. Zachra says DC Winter was a weird event. Oh wait, I read that one already. But he then says my favorite one was Teen Titans Endless Winter. I really liked that one too, and we will talk about that in a bit. And the downside of this is I'm not reviewing every issue, but I did want to see if I could follow things even if we skip an issue like we did with the Superman one. And something else, I think, because that's part 1 and 2. So I think this is also where that other issue I didn't review is, but I'm blanking on its name. I have the list here. But there, nope. There. Oh, and Aquaman. So I don't really know what's going on in those ones, but I also don't think it's terribly important. It kind of just is what it is. So the Justice League book kind of follows the pattern of the rest of the tie-ins as far as I can discern. So, sorry, this stranger in the home, but they're leaving anyway, so it's fine. Hey, do you want keys before you go?
Yes.
You should probably do that. There you go. Anyways, that's funny. That just makes me laugh. So, meanwhile, the flashbacks kind of reveal that the Frost King has a family, and there's this ongoing struggle of what to do, but they eventually just kind of bring the family to try and, like, reach out to the Frost King back in the 10th century. But Black Adam is, like, this huge cog in their wheel and attacks, like, right in front of the family, basically endangering everyone. Meanwhile, the Justice League is kind of trying to regroup, and John returns to the Hall of Justice just to kind of investigate what's going on, only for, like, the Frost King and his entire army to show up. It's really interesting, and he kind of has to do a showdown, but then the rest of the Justice League shows up real quick because they're all super speedy like that, and they square off against the Frost King and everything, and he eventually backs off. And they don't really know why he's attacking and stuff, and they're trying to figure it out. But they just vow, like, they have to track down the Frost King and figure this out, and he seems to be targeting them specifically. There's 2 reasons for that, and we'll get into why. One is he seems to mistake them for the same heroes and beings that took him down in the 10th century. And the other being there's this Kryptonian connection because he's being empowered with Kryptonian crystals. And he kind of recognizes a lot of the heroes, just like I said. Swamp Thing was around back then, Black Adam was around back then, so he's not without reason and stuff. And the Teen Titans special is kind of the same thing. We flash back to these this ongoing struggle in the past, and to me it's like we're kind of checking in and out as we skip some issues, but I don't think it's terribly important. Meanwhile, the Teen Titans are all working at the tower to, like, use it as a sort of refuge to feed people. And the Teen Titans that we know, the ones who were all led down the rabbit hole by Robin and turned into, like, almost villains by him, thanks to Damian, are actually working kind of with Donna Troy and Beast Boy to sort of redeem themselves and do some good. And they talk a lot about that, and it's really interesting kind of reflecting that continuity. And this is something I really actually like about Endless Winter, is it's what it is, more than anything else, is DC's first post-death metal story. And it kind of shows us what these stories can be like, where they can exist in multiple levels of continuity. We don't have to be super sticklers about things, but we can also use it to inform something like this Teen Titans special in a very fun way. Because I like this most recent iteration of the Teen Titans. And I really enjoyed their story, so it's kind of cool seeing a follow-up and them trying to redeem themselves. They encounter this girl who's got, like, these frost powers, and she tells them the story of how she got, like, involved in all this Endless Winter stuff, and she seems to be related to it. Meanwhile, the Titans are a little unsure of what to do, kind of thing. And I think Wally West shows up. And oh, well, yeah, I guess there's both Wally West. Oh no, wait, or is that Barry Allen? I can't even tell anymore. But basically, the story continues on in Justice League Dark. And that gets into a whole bunch of other stuff, but again, like I don't really think it's that important that you read every single issue because we kind of just move on right to the Black Adam special. But I'll catch up with Chad a little bit again. Zachariah says the Titans were good, I guess. They were all right. I didn't hate reading any of them, like you said. I thought the Teen Titans one was good because of that continuity-friendly thing. Darkseid says, what Injustice year was your favorite? And Zachariah said year 5 was his. And Darkseid says his was probably year 1. My favorite is probably year 2. But, you know, it's interesting. Like 5 is kind of an interesting choice because that might be my least favorite, but to each their own. Tevia, thanks for joining us. Zachariah says the Frost King had every right to do what he did because Black Adam is a dick. I wouldn't go that far. Black Adam is certainly a dick and a real asshole, but the Frost King was just rampaging blindly across the earth, seemingly out of control, so I don't think he was justified or really that deep of a villain. That gets into what I was saying about like Lanning and Marz kind of feel like a more throwback writers or something like that, where our villains are a little simpler and less thought through, I suppose. Tevia says, honestly, I thought Endless Winter was a meh event. Yeah, that's kind of what Zachariah was saying earlier, and I'm kind of with you guys. I'll get more thoughts as we go along, but it's definitely like got some really cool moments, got some interesting ideas. I think it reflects the sort of positive atmosphere in the world of DC post-death metal, where you can do a lot of different things in its story, and then they really take it to a whole new level, which we're going to get into as we talk about the Future State books. I just wanted to talk about this first. So like, as a big event, it's not that exciting, but as this short little like side thing, as a sort of cool off, if you will, pun intended, for like post-death metal, I think that kind of works, but I would have maybe liked even more of a palate cleanser because this does reek of kind of like a comic book event, which is a little silly immediately after death metal. I would have preferred more of a palate cleanser in that regard. But it does do some interesting things with Black Adam, and it's not like a terrible story. I do feel there's a lot more interesting stuff going on in Future State, though, if you're looking for some post-death metal content to check out. Tevia says, also, I wasn't a fan of this iteration of the Teen Titans. Oh, that's interesting. We were talking about that earlier because I quite enjoyed them, and I think they were a real interesting, different take on the team, which I quite enjoyed. Zachariah says, but I love the tie-ins more than the main story. That's kind of interesting because I found a lot of the tie-ins a bit of a distraction this time around. Zachariah asked if we covered the Scott Snyder Justice League run. Yeah, we did quite a few videos on that as it was progressing. No like big final grand review or anything like that, so we might do that one day, but there's certainly videos out there on our channel, and I think we even made some playlists for it, so you can look those up pretty easily, I feel. Darkseid says, I always watch World War Hulk. I'm not sure what that means, but or you always wanted to watch that. It's noted, I guess. And then so next up is the Black Adam special. Again, we flash back, and actually at this point we see the fall of the Frost King in the first time around, but it actually cost the life of the Viking Prince, which I think is just a very loose allusion to Thor, which is kind of neat. It might explain why similar concepts exist in DC of these gods living and stuff, but they aren't quite the same as the world of Marvel, because like Thor just died a long time ago kind of thing. But his spirit does return and ultimately possesses the Swamp Thing, as we find out. But meanwhile, Stag Industries is trying to mine all these Kryptonian crystals, and they even find the Frost King's family still frozen in one. But all of a sudden, they're attacked by a bunch of villains, and we pretty soon realize that they are working on behalf of Black Adam, who storms the facility and just starts rampaging through it. But sure enough, the Frost King shows up, realizing that his family's there. And Black Adam is like quick to strike, being like, I defeated you once, monster. Even though he didn't, it was actually the Viking Prince and Swamp Thing more than anyone, but whatever. And the Frost King was weaker back then. So Black Adam is wildly overconfident here and pretty soon gets pummeled and grabbed by him. But for a moment, he actually has the Frost King when he threatens to blow up the guy's family, and the villain is still reasonable enough to realize A, that he doesn't want his family to die, and B, Black Adam is more than capable of destroying his family. Maybe there's more caveats to all this about why the Frost King's doing what he's doing, but whatever. Like I said, this is a partial review. But pretty quickly, Stag Industries and like their head science guy head of the company, I guess, summons a giant robot powered by Kryptonian crystals, and he blasts the Frost King, but only empowers him further. At which point he grabs Black Adam and prepares to just outright kill the villain. So like I said, a wild miscalculation under the part of Teth Adam, but I digress. And luckily for him, the Justice League shows up to save the day. And they got a whole bunch of tricks up their sleeves as like a culmination of all these tie-ins. There's a fun little nod to Flash and Black Adam's encounter earlier in the story. And Swamp Thing gets possessed by the Viking Prince and becomes this giant, and he battles a giant version of the Frost King across like this giant, this giant glacier thing, and it's just this big epic thing. This gets into like the kind of content I don't think was super welcome in the wake of death metal, and I kind of needed a long break before I read all these books and was willing to get into it after death metal too. So I wasn't exactly in a rush, and I think that was a bit of a miscalculation on DC's part. Meanwhile, Batman and Hippolyta, which is a fun little combination, managed to find not only Frost King's family, but the original human version of the Frost King. And Hippolyta is kind of interesting, because she realizes like she kind of failed this man the first time around. He was like possessed by this thing, but could have been seen reason through the family, and she kind of just let Black Adam do his thing and feels it was all a mistake. She should have given herself and the Frost King a chance to do the right thing. And this time she's like, I think I can reach him. But then Black Adam again shows up like 10 centuries later to again just try and force a violent solution out of this. But this time there's Superman. And I'm guessing he and Superman had an encounter in Superman's time. I don't think it's terribly important, but he's like, we haven't finished this. And he just takes Black Adam into the sky and sort of just like tries to keep him busy while this is going on. Meanwhile, and again, this gets into like this story kind of being more of a classic, older style DC story. Just as everything's going wrong, Aquaman shows up, who's been missing from everything else except for his own tie-in up until now. And he's like, I'm here and I've brought some fire trolls. And they all kind of go on a rampage. And it's actually great because Arthur's like, oh, where's everybody? Barry Allen's updating him on everything that's happened over the course of the event. And he's like quickly trying to help out and work with everyone else. But even then, like the Frost King is like kind of overpowering everyone and stuff. And he starts to like go critical and they can't contain him. But eventually, with like a mighty blow, Swamp Thing's able to kind of take him out, and they're able to pull the human Frost King out of it, and everything goes back to normal, just like that. So again, like just another like kind of, I hate when big events do this, where it's like, oh, it's all over in a second, like blink and you miss it kind of thing. But that's that. They send the Viking Prince's soul back off into Valhalla, like, but thanks for coming back and possessing Swamp Thing and helping us out. I'm guessing, like, again, that must have happened during the Justice League Dark series, but whatever. Black Adam has a big, long speech about how, like, the Justice League was basically responsible for this, which they were in the most convoluted and incoherent way possible. Just, like, think about it in terms, like, 'cause, like, why did Superman ever think it was okay to leave those crystals behind? But whatever. And in response to that, Superman does build a new Fortress of Solitude in that area because he's like, well, at least this way this site will be secure from other threats if it is this protected fortress. Again, I don't know why he wasn't more preemptive about that, but the reason is because the story had to happen, and that's a real unfortunate bit of writing. I like Lanning and Marz as writers. It just really feels like, oh, like they're a little dated at this point, or at least this story felt that way. And I got nothing against them personally. I like a ton of stuff they've written before. I read this and felt like, man, it really feels like two writers who were most active in the industry 3 decades ago wrote this thing. But we end at the Fortress of Solitude, where they've actually managed to kind of restore and return to a human form, the Frost King, and they aren't able to get out his family, but he's very grateful for them. He's like, "You've given me a second chance. Thank you for saving me." And he kind of goes into stasis until they can figure out a solution for all of them. So they get whisked away out of the story and out of any long-term consequences, but there is sort of a happy ending, and it's an interesting way of kind of leaving the villain. And then, in perhaps my favorite moment in this whole story, we flash back to the 10th century of Egypt, and Hippolyta is knocking Black Adam down into this tomb, and she's like, "You can move, or I will move you, but either way, you are going back in that tomb." And he starts to fight back at her, and then he's just surrounded by growth and vines and stuff, and the Swamp Thing's like, "You have earned this." And even the wizard shows up and says, "Black Adam, you disappoint me yet again. I thought you would have been worthy, of these powers, but I'm going to put you to sleep in here, and then maybe one day you will be again." And he gets sealed away until, the modern age. And it's just such a great moment of, Hippolyta and Swamp Thing being like, "You screwed this adventure up so much for you, you have to go." And that's how they dealt with it back then. And it's kind of an interesting hint of perhaps something to come in the future, because, clearly Black Adam is this threat, and he wants to force his hand again and try and fight against the heroes. But what's interesting about it is that's happened before, but when it did, he was like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were all kind of away at the time, and they weren't around. So if that happens again with them around, I'll be very interested in how it all turns out. I imagine it's not going to unveil the same way as 52. So it's just some interesting food for thought. And one of the more interesting aspects of the whole story is Black Adam's role in it and how he's treated. I need some more light. Hang on a sec, guys. I've been in partial shadow for a while now. So I think I'm kind of with everyone in chat and what people have been saying so far about, I'm very in the middle about this thing. I didn't hate it, and it's so far from, the worst DC event I've ever read, or, comic book event and stuff like that. But it wasn't spectacular either, and not terribly exciting, if you ask me. There's some talk of Future State in the chat, but I have a whole bunch of Future State books lined up to talk about, so I'm going to leave that for now. I haven't read them all, though, but so many are good that I might start picking up some extra ones, because what I have read so far has been really fun. But it might just be the books I've happened to have picked up, too, so who knows. I'm not sure what you guys are talking about there, so I'm just going to let you... You're talking to each other, though, so that's fine. TWK says, "Yeah, Zack Snyder Justice League, only on HBO Max March 18th. Well, I'm glad you're all excited. Let's put it that way. I've seen the trailer, and I'm glad a lot of people are excited for it. You can push your luck if you want, but I'm going to leave it at that for now." Let's just put it that way. Paul Dalreason says, "I like Future State, Robin, and the Titans." Well, that's cool. Like I said, we'll talk about that more. I just kind of read that comment blind. Chat's talking about Injustice 1 and 2, the games. I like that. Yeah, there's a lot of people all really excited for the Zack Snyder cut. Zachariah was saying that earlier, and I was just kind of echoing it. Tevye said, yeah, so like I said, we'll leave Future State for now. I have a bunch of those planned, but I wanted to get this out of the way. I also have a whole bunch of other Marvel event stuff to talk about, and a huge pile of books over there. I don't think you can see it. Oh, you can kind of see it. They're behind the globe on the floor there. But whatever works. Tevye says, "I'm not really excited for the Snyder Cut, but I am intrigued by what's going to happen with that movie." You know, I was kind of just politely avoiding my opinions of Snyder Cut, but it is roughly that. It's not like, oh, I think it's gonna be a pile of crap. I'm just not nearly as excited as other people. I didn't really like that trailer, and it's just like, well, I'm very curious though. Like, I'll definitely be watching it and give it like with an open mind. Let's put it that way. We'll see. Zachariah says, "Why does the Spectre tell Wonder Woman that John Kent turns evil? Where does that happen?" I'm gonna look that up. Oh, okay. Well, we'll review that too in the future. I also have that book sitting in that pile over there, and I'm excited to talk about that as well. Ozymandias 2014 says, I've read your comments before, Ozzy. I just haven't read it out, I guess, properly like that. That really makes me laugh. It says, any talk of DC bringing back the All-Star Squadron along with the JSA? That would be cool. I think that was definitely more on the table when DC was more leveling the 5G. I haven't seen anything like that, but it would be fun to see them do something along those lines. Certainly in the world of death metal, all of those stories and characters and canon is out there, just in the DC Omniverse, so anyone can pick it up and do it. Yeah, I figured that out, Zachariah. We will talk about Infinite Frontier as I start to barrel through some of these comics and try and catch up. But Endless Winter was kind of the first step in that. Then we're going to go through a bunch of the future state books now that that's sort of wrapped up. And then we're going to get into Infinite Frontier and beyond. I've ordered a bunch of books, and we'll kind of go from there. So Zachariah says, Black Adam and Namor are just alike, both dickhead kings. Yeah, pretty much. Very similar kind of personality and edge there, but like I said, I think Black Adam's one of the more interesting aspects of Endless Winter. I do kind of like the attitude of characters like Namor and Black Adam, and even ones like T'Challa and Black Panther and stuff, who kind of push back against the Western world and sort of have their own attitudes, beliefs, and kind of can hold the heroes accountable. I wish that whole issue was handled better, if Superman was somehow less culpable in all this, in a less obvious way. It would have been really interesting, but this is also a very, very, very simple story that wasn't going for crazy extra stuff or anything like that. It was relatively just nice and clean and simple. I was able to summarize what the story was about at the beginning of the stream, which is like, oh, there's like an ice age taking over the earth and the Justice League has to stop it. That's it. That really is the story, and everything else is just kind of details. And the details are good and kind of what makes the story at least like somewhat interesting, but I think that... What am I trying to say? I guess what I'm trying to say is like... I don't know. I guess I kind of lost my greater point. It's just like it was okay as its like own little thing, as like a simple story. So because it's simple, it didn't really need to do all this extra character stuff, but it kind of was doing that, and there is that contradiction. I guess that's what I was getting at, and that made it a little janky. Let's put it that way. Ozymandias says, my question will be, can re-editing a movie redeem a film that was less than loved? Time will tell. Yeah, and I think we will definitely do a review for the Snyder Cut when it comes out. The thing about what you're saying there is I'm not entirely sure that's true, though, because it was released in theaters. That's the version most people are going to see. And I think this whole HBO thing, maybe because of the hype, it will take on its own relevance in a way past director's cuts haven't, but usually it just becomes like this weird blur and people have different preferred versions and stuff like that. I will say this. I would be truly shocked if I liked the Snyder Cut less than the actual theatrical Justice League one. It would be real weird. Like, I expect I'll like it more than the Justice League movie we've all seen. I haven't seen any of that footage that got leaked or anything like that. I'll see it, March 18th with everyone else, like when it comes out kind of thing. Zachariah says something interesting that I actually am going to disagree with. He says, Endless Winter made Black Adam compelling. That's true in the context of Endless Winter, but this has all been covered for Black Adam before. This is all stuff from 52 and the character that's been well established. This isn't anything new for Black Adam. So I agree with you, and it's kind of cool that there was a story that kind of focuses in on Black Adam a little bit, and he had like a great moment with the Flash and a much more contentious moment with Superman. That sort of thing works. I just I don't let's not give Lanning and Marz credit for something they didn't do. That was stuff that I think really got firmed up around the era of 52. Not the new 52, the original 52 story that we're actually currently covering here on Comic Island, and we're going to have the last part of that out pretty soon. Tevia says, speaking of which, that reminds me, where was Damian Wayne or John Kent during this entire event? Well, that kind of gets into some stuff I was saying about, like, this is the world of the Omniverse now, where it's like, well, some characters were involved here, some weren't. There's a long laundry list of characters we don't see from. Even, like, Lois Lane isn't really a part of this story, unless she is in the Superman issue, but by and large, like, only some characters were involved in this thing, and I'm okay with that. Zachariah says, are you excited for Suicide Squad by James Gunn? Because I am. It's going to be a real comic book movie. So, talking about stuff we're excited about in the DCEU, yeah, I am way more excited for the Suicide Squad over the Snyder Cut, for example. It's kind of cool because the Snyder Cut is like around the corner, and God knows how long we're going to have to wait for the Suicide Squad movie, but that James Gunn's talented, and I'm really curious what his take on Suicide Squad is. I don't think it's just going to be a ripoff of Guardians of the Galaxy, because he did that too. So hopefully it's kind of its own thing, which I am optimistic about. Let's leave it at that. But yeah, I'm like really excited about that compared to that. Zachariah says, I like how they put Wonder Woman's mom in Endless Winter. Well, okay, so maybe, like, in spite of my criticism, I really do like the characters focused in on here, because the main characters of the story in a lot of ways are Black Adam, Hippolyta, and like Swamp Thing. And then the secondary characters are kind of the entirety of the Justice League. You get like a special issue with the Teen Titans, and otherwise it's pretty much just that. So we don't get a ton of extra characters. We got a little bit of cameos here and there, but not too much in terms of like the Super Sons or anything like that. But just enough to kind of like sort of hold us over back in December, and just like as a little winter special. And I also thought it was kind of appropriate as we're exiting winter. I don't know what weather's like in your area, but we are firmly heading in that direction here in Canada. It's just nice to kind of say goodbye to it with this little stream on Endless Winter. Ozymandias says, is Black Adam DC's version of Doctor Doom, villain to the outside world, hero to his nation, or at least a protector in their own eyes at least? Well, that's a useful comparison. I'd definitely say that's been pretty well established for Black Adam and Kahndaq. I would say his attitude and relationship with the other superheroes is less generally egregious than it is with Doctor Doom, though. Like Doctor Doom, there's a lot of animosity between him and the Fantastic Four and Iron Man and all these other characters. Like, they have this complicated history, and it's generally not friendly. Black Adam, it's not like he's friendly with the other superheroes, but when the Flash like passed out in front of him in his issue, I knew Black Adam was just going to take him in and heal him, because that's the character he kind of is. He's not just going to like, oh, there's a superhero in front of me exposed, I should just kill him or take him prisoner. Dr. Doom would do the latter. He'd take him prisoner and use him as a resource. Black Adam just helped him and like sent him on his way. It gets into like Teth Adam, I think at his core is not a terrible human being. He's kind of like dumb, I guess, or like he's quick to anger. He's got like these issues, and they prevent him from being a fully good person, but that potential is there. So I think it's a useful comparison to evoke Doctor Doom and Namor and stuff, but he is kind of his own thing too. And part of that is he's also got more power than anyone. Doctor Doom, I think, kind of is technically more powerful, but it's more of that he's able to use power more effectively. Black Adam has all this raw, insane strength, and that kind of informs a lot of it. Like, he's not necessarily the kind of person that would have rose to that position on his own otherwise. So I find that he's interesting because of that. Ozymandias is like, or is it Shazam officially now? Hey, now they just changed Shazam because calling a DC character Captain Marvel made no sense, and they also don't own that name anymore. So that's the way it's got to be. Bucket Think Tank says the problem is he just hasn't had anything to do of relevance lately in comics. Like outside of 52 and small stuff like Forever Evil and Sinestro, Black Adam hasn't been in much of anything lately. You know, Bucket, you are 100% right. And it almost feels like the story is like picking up off of 52, like 15 years later, which makes no sense. He's a cool character, but that's definitely been misused, and like he really doesn't show up enough outside of Shazam comics for it to really be a thing. But Endless Winter kind of shows that potential and shows how interesting it is. I think Bucket kind of hit it on the nail on the head, though, where it's like, well, why is Endless Winter the first time that he's had a real confrontation with the Justice League when Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are around? How has that not happened since 52? And I think the real answer to that is because DC rebooted itself in between then and now with the new 52 and all the stuff with Rebirth, and because of that there hasn't been enough space for Black Adam. But now DC is like, oh right, we're making a Black Adam movie, we should do more stories with Black Adam. Like the dunces they are, it took them that long to come around to the idea, but whatever. We ain't them, we can't run the company. But I think that's an excellent point by Bucket Think Tank that I really didn't think to bring up. So that's great. Ozymandias says, shocking enough, never saw the first Suicide Squad. Well, like I saw the extended edition, and I still don't think you're really missing much. It really, I think, was a disappointing movie. It suffers from a lot of the problems of the other DCEU films of that era. And I just didn't like it. It had its moments, like everything else, but it didn't really come together into anything that special. Darkseid says, have you heard there's going to be a Justice League movie? What? Like, another one? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Zachariah Solomon says, Mongol and Suicide Squad. I was like, yes, more alien races in other than Kryptonians in the DCEU. That does sound exciting to me too. And he also says, oh, they're doing a Zatanna movie and Static. Look up the DC chart of new things in development. I'll have to check that out, yeah. And then he asked if I'm excited for the Black Adam film. Tentatively, yes. I think it's one of those things I wish they had done a little earlier when The Rock was like maybe a little younger or something, but it'll be interesting. It really depends on what they do with it, because they could really do anything, but he's such a cool character. If they get like 1/10 of him right, it'll be awesome. So here's hoping. Zachariah says, what is up with Swamp Thing? How is he that old to be around Black Adam? Well, it's not the same Swamp Thing that like is the former avatar of Alec Holland. Swamp Thing is this idea that gets passed down generation upon generation. So it was the Swamp Thing of that era. No different than like the Ghost Rider or something like that. So that's the answer to your question. Ozymandias says, I think it's a shame that the New Gods storyline powering Shazam would be a great story to pick back up. What happens to Teth and Dam or the Marvel family? Yeah, well, that's the nice thing about the Omniverse, is if someone has a good idea with something like that, they can bring it back in an interesting way. The Ninja Kenko says, Dr. Doom can bring out more potential in mutants than Professor X, in my opinion. That's really interesting. That's a funny idea that kind of got teased a little bit in the Fantastic Four X-Men crossover. I'm not sure you're entirely wrong, except for Doom is like a horrible dictator that would like lock up mutants and experiment on them and torture them. It's easy to lose sight on that because he can be competent at times, not like unnecessarily cruel, and cool as hell all the time. But it's easy to forget that it's like, oh no, he's a war criminal. It would be terrible to live in Latveria, for example, or in a world controlled by Doom, even though if Doom took over the world, it'd be considerably better than a lot of other supervillains. So, like, I love Dr. Doom. He's very interesting, but that dude ain't good. We shouldn't forget that. Zachariah says, the New Gods movie will never get made. They seem to have pretty firm details about that with, like, a director attached, writers and everything, so we'll see. I'm not that skeptical, especially these days where DC is got. Okay, Ozymandias, I kind of got what you were saying, even if I said it wrong with you. But I kind of got what you're saying. You said it was a shame the New Gods storyline with them powering Shazam was a great story, and it was a shame that it was dropped. But like, I do kind of feel it's like, yeah, it can come back because of the nature of the Omniverse, and it can be dealt with again. And the Shazam series that ran was also pretty good from what we saw of it, like on this channel and stuff. And I'd be kind of curious what comes of that too. Like, they were kind of teasing some interesting stuff with Black Adam there that really showcase a redemption arc for Tethadam, which I would be fascinated by. But that might run contrary to their other plans, so we'll see. Zechariah says it would be the next Holocaust for the mutants, and we don't want that, so Doom is better off leaving the mutants alone. I don't think you're entirely wrong. Like, he would do messed up, death campy stuff like that. Ozymandias says, a quote from Firestorm in COIE: if Kid Marvel, Baby Marvel, and Fetus Marvel show up, I'm going home. Wow. I maybe should check that out. Bucket Think Tank says, Doom feels more like Sinestro is his DC counterpart as opposed to Black Adam, for me at least. Oh, I like that. A lot of similar themes going on between those two characters, because they kind of like are heroes to their people, like they were saying, a similar level of competence and also maliciousness. And animosity to other heroes beyond even just their like enemies, like the Green Lantern and the Fantastic Four, respectively. Yeah, I think Bucket's onto something there. Zachariah says the X-Men will beat Doctor Doom before he attacks. That's probably true at this point with all the resources Krakoa has. Doom can talk a tough game, but I don't know if he can beat that. He might act like he can beat that and feel that he can beat that, but he doesn't have his like Secret Wars powers now or anything like that. Zachariah says Blackest Night is one of the best DC events in my opinion. Yeah, I don't entirely disagree. I do love that one. Oh, Crisis of Infinite Earths is what Ozymandias is saying. That's funny. Oh, really? Yeah. Like, I've kind of worked... That's the story I'm kind of actively reading. Unfortunately, I cannot read your translation there, SVYT. Some sort of Russian speak, and yeah, I got nothing. But yeah, I was gonna say, Blackest Night is one of the few tie-in stories where I've like read all, or sorry, one of the few crossover stories where I've read all the tie-ins. I really find it interesting. It's just such a cool idea that the Black Lanterns can see the emotions in other people. So we get to see this whole cross-section of the DC universe and what of the like rainbow core they most affiliate with. So some characters have a lot of willpower, some compassion, all these cool things set up in Blackest Night. I think it's one of my all-time favorite comic book crossover events, not just DC. Like, it easily competes with some of Marvel's best stuff too. Zachariah says Cypher getting married was weird as hell in the X-Men. Yeah, yeah. But oh god, you're reminding me of all that now. But I did love that. And we still have to talk about a little bit more of Exo Swords, so maybe we'll leave things there for now. I think that was a nice long stream. Really fun to talk with all you guys. Some really cool questions and ideas that got floated out around here. And a fun little discussion about Endless Winter. So next time we'll be talking about more Marvel stuff and DC stuff, but we are going to get into Infinite Crisis, Future State for DC. Thank you all so much for joining me. Maybe next time I'll do some translation on the spot for SVYT, but I think I'm going to kind of wrap things up there. Oh, you guys want to fill in chat right when I was about to go, eh? Oh, that's interesting. Well, Ozymandias is recommending some of those Tales from the Dark Multiverse story, which I did a preview for, but never actually checked out, so I'll have to check those out at some point. Thank you. And thank you for chatting throughout the stream. Bucket Think Tank says, Blackest Night was my first DC book, and I was so lost as to where the DC universe stood. Like, what do you mean Batman is dead, lol? Well, that would be confusing, but it also, I feel like, is a decent introduction to the DC universe, because it teaches you so much about these characters. Like, oh, okay, this is Hawkman, and he loves Hawkgirl. And you can see that because the Black Lanterns see all this love in him, and stuff like that. Zachariah is saying, where is Hal? He's not been in the Justice League for a while. Last I see him with the team was Death Metal. Well, I mean, he might be off in Grant Morrison world doing that whole like thing where he's like living in his ring or something like that. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. It's interesting how they've kind of let him sort of go to the side, and characters such as Jon Stewart are more earthbound, or you have the newbies. What are their names? Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz kind of taking the spotlight. I actually like that. I like how kind of going off and doing his own thing in Grant Morrison's story, like while that was running, and I think it'll kind of come back based on some of the new uh, Green Lantern stuff. Um, Zacharias saying Green Lantern and Grant Morrison sucks. My God, I did hate it. I thought it was interesting so far from what I've read, but I haven't read all of it yet, so we'll leave it at that. But yeah, thanks guys. We'll see you next time, and well, thanks for joining me. Have a good night, everybody.